I just hit 100,000 miles in my Mk 7.5 GTI. Let me tell you how this car has been holding up. So to start off with, I bought this car about 2.5 years ago with 59,000 miles on it. So in this video, I'm gonna be going over a couple things with this car. The first thing I'm gonna go over is how everything's aging as far as the exterior and the interior. The second thing I'm gonna be going over is how the engine and the trans and everything in the engine bay is holding up and all the things that involve that. And the third thing that I'm gonna be going over is all the problems and all the things that you might wanna watch out for when you start creeping up in miles in this car. So first of all, I'm gonna start talking about how this car is aged, the exterior, the interior, how just kind of the panels are holding up, how the interior quality is holding up. So first, let's start talking about the exterior. The first thing I'm gonna mention is rock chips. I don't know if you guys can really tell on video, but definitely the bottom part of my bumper, my old headlights, and even my hood all have a significant amount of rock chips in them. And that might not be a huge deal, and obviously, you know, if you drive it, you drive it, and rock chips are just gonna be kind of inevitable. But the way that the aero kind of works on this car definitely beats the hood up pretty bad, and I even have a few rock chips that are like above my windshield, and I honestly don't know how they're getting up there, but they are. So that is definitely one thing to keep in mind. So the actual paint quality along the whole car is still absolutely phenomenal till this day on every single panel on the car. It still has its shine. It's still got that deep Great Falls green that I really wanted from this car. And even with the rock chips and whatever else happens, it still is holding up very good. The paint job is very high quality on these cars. So the next thing I want to talk about are the wheels on this car. Now obviously you can kind of tell that these are not in the best condition, and trust me, the rest of them are debatably worse. This is probably the best one. But these rims are actually very sturdy and durable. I haven't heard many cases of these rims getting bent, cracked, or anything. Unfortunately, they are very heavy. For that reason alone, I actually really don't like them because it does make the car a little bit more luggy. But besides that, the actual quality of the rim is actually really, really good. And the brake calipers, the paint on them have actually stayed in very good condition over the years. I don't know if you can tell, but like there's really not much like paint chipping or paint damaging on that at all. So now I want to talk about kind of rusting in the underbody. So just to give you guys a little bit of background, I live in New Jersey, so we get a lot of rain. Our winters are kind of meh. Sometimes we get snow, sometimes we don't, whatever. But as far as rusting goes on this car, the only thing on this entire car that has just a little bit amount of rust is the subframe. And it really is not significant by any means. And honestly, that's the only thing on the entire underbody that even has a little bit of rust. And the last thing that I want to mention about the aging and quality and stuff about the exterior is going to be the little plastic clips and little like push pins or whatever. Those become more and more fragile as this car goes on. I've noticed the more that I've been modifying it, the more little plastic things that I see on it, and they do tend to break. They are really cheap to get replacements for, like I'm talking like $5 for like a bunch of them. But besides those little plastic clips, I would say that's really the only thing that is not aging great on this entire outside of this car. Before I move on to the interior of this car, it is getting a little bit dark out, so I'm gonna pick this video up back in the morning. All right, so it's the next day, finally got some sunlight, so let's now talk about the interior. So first, I'll talk about the seats. Honestly, these cloth plaid seats have held up very, very well. Both seats don't really have much wear, much tear. They're honestly still in really good condition, and all throughout the 100,000 miles, I haven't really needed to do too much to these seats besides just kind of shampoo them every once in a while, wipe them down just to make sure that there's no dirt or whatever on them. But it goes kind of back to, if you take care of these seats, they're gonna be perfectly fine. And as you can see, I mean, they look great still now. So the quality of the trim and the buttons and everything all work. I mean, nothing really to complain about. Everything is still intact. I mean, I don't think anything is gonna break button wise. I think everything's built pretty good quality. So now the steering wheel. The leather on the steering wheel definitely has gotten worn down a little bit, but that's kind of to be expected, especially when you drive a car on a daily basis. As you can see, it's just kind of faded a little bit, but I mean, overall, for this kind of baking in the sun a little bit, especially the top, I mean, it's still in great condition. It feels fine, and none of the stitching or anything has undone yet. No problems, honestly, all around with the steering wheel quality. So obviously, I have an aftermarket shift knob. I absolutely love the BFI shift knob. I definitely recommend anyone with a manual car to probably get this. But what I will say is the OEM like golf ball shift knob definitely does not hold up as well as aftermarket ones probably do. When I bought the car, the golf ball shift knob was already not in the best condition. So that is definitely something that probably doesn't age very well. And if I still had that golf ball shift knob on till this day, it would probably be pretty beat up. The last thing I'm going to talk about in the interior is going to be this bad boy, the infotainment screen. And honestly, these are notorious for being horrible in these cars.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Unless you have the 8-inch glass screen, those are actually pretty solid. But if you have these or the ones that are in the normal Mk7s, honestly, they're super glitchy. They're laggy, the CarPlay doesn't consistently work, and honestly, if there's any way that you can somehow upgrade to an 8-inch screen, I definitely would, just because of how much better that infotainment screen is. Okay, now, let's talk about everything under the engine bay. So first I'm going to talk about the transmission, then I'm going to talk about the engine, and then I'm going to talk about the other things that I've needed to replace. So for the transmission, it actually is a fairly solid transmission with like maybe one or two kind of decent flaws. One problem that I ran into was my clutch. As soon as I tuned the car, it blew out and I had to get an upgraded clutch because I wanted to go to stage 2 and have like a ethanol map. So I got a stage 2 DKM clutch and absolutely love it. Have had no problems since I put it in, and I have been running that clutch basically almost the entire time of me having this car. That was like the second mod that I did to the car. I did a full exhaust system, whole turbo back system, and then I did the clutch. Those were like the first two things that I did, and no complaints at all after I got the clutch done. The second thing that I ran into was the throwout bearing. That went out around like 85K, and ever since I got it replaced, I have had no problems. It also might have went because this was the car I actually learned how to drive manual on, and it definitely did get a bit of a beating when I was first learning, but now I would like to think that I'm a lot better than I was, and that's probably why I'm not having much of a problem with it anymore. But besides those two things, transmission has been perfectly fine, no leaks. I did get the fluids flushed and changed at 60K, so I would probably do that because that's what it's recommended for. But I'm probably gonna change it again in maybe like another 20K. Besides that, the trans has been completely fine, and there's not much else that you would probably need to do. Okay, so the first thing with the engine is obviously I Audi swapped the entire thing.
Sure, buddy. What?
So for the engine, let's start by talking about the oil. I change my oil probably every 4,000 miles. I use 5W40 liquid moly every time. Obviously change the oil filter, usually just get like Mobil 1. And I add liquid moly Ceratec probably like every 3 oil changes just to kind of protect everything internally. Next thing we'll talk about is the spark plugs and coil packs. So I've been changing the spark plugs every 20,000 miles pretty much. I'm running NGK colder 8-range heat plugs. I love those. I've been using those. Those are the spark plugs that I think probably everyone should probably use, because if you're tuned, you need the colder ones, and the NGK ones are definitely one of the best. And now I'm running RS3 styled coil packs. I actually used to run the APR ones, but I've been hearing iffy things about them, so I just decided to change them. Everyone was telling me to get OEM ones. Even my tuner said to get OEM ones. So I did get OEM ones. They're just red capped. They're basically exactly OEM caps. They're just fucking RS3 style. So I actually replaced my PCV valve. It never actually ended up going, but I just kind of did that because I heard that they do like to go when you get to higher mileage. So I replaced it with the Mark 8 retrofit. So far, it's actually been working pretty good. I am working on trying to custom fit the vacuum line somehow, because I have a turbo muffler delete and charge pipe already, and that taps into a turbo muffler delete with like a little nipple that you kind of just like plug that into. So I'm working on trying to tap that into somewhere. But besides that, it's been running pretty good so far with that. I've had that on for probably about like 8K or so. So I did that when I hit like around 90K miles. The next thing that I did replace was the serpentine belt. It definitely was worn a decent amount and has never been changed. When I took it off, it looked fine, but definitely glad that I replaced it. So when you get higher mileage, I'd probably just replace that. I did that, I think, right before I hit 100K. So you shouldn't need to, but definitely just keep an eye on it. One more thing with the engine. If you guys have an air intake, especially a more open air intake, make sure to always clean your air intake out. Like, I would do it every oil change personally, just shake it out or spray it with an air gun or whatever. But definitely clean out your intake, because that will clog up a lot of airflow that goes into your car. So make sure to take it out, just look at it. I have an OEM drop-in high flow K&N filter, and I take it out literally like every oil change and just like wave it around, just unclog it basically. And there's always stuff in there, so always make sure to clean that out whenever you can. But one thing that I actually am looking to do pretty soon is get a coil grounding kit, because I feel like these bolts definitely get worn out over time, and definitely getting more grounding would be a lot more beneficial, I feel like. So that is definitely a mod that I would also probably look into. As far as the engine goes, that's really all the things that I've needed to like replace as far as maintenance wise. So as far as everything else goes, mechanical wise, I did do a coolant flush also right before I hit 100,000 miles. You probably don't need to, but I just did because I wanted to make sure that all the fluids were fresh and whatnot. Another thing was engine and transmission mounts. I also did the dog bone, but that just came with the whole kit. But especially engine and trans mounts, I think people should probably do those at some point. I have the stage 2 BFI ones. They are definitely very stiff, but I will say that it does feel a lot more tight in corners, and everything just feels way more mounted. But they are extremely stiff, so if you're not looking for a crazy stiff ride, especially with the manual, I would just go stage 1s. But I don't know, I kind of like the stiffness, so I'm just gonna keep them stage 2. The engine and transmission mounts definitely were getting very worn out, and I could tell that when I was replacing them. So doing that also would be probably very beneficial, especially when you get into higher mileage in these cars. I also want to talk about the brakes. I've never had to do anything about any of my brake calipers. They've all stayed in very good condition throughout the whole life, but I did change all of the brake pads right around 80K. And when I did the brake pads, I also got the rear rotors replaced because one of them had a chip in it. So I did both of the back ones. Besides me replacing all the pads once and the back rotors, I think the next time that I have to do anything brake wise, I'm definitely going to look into getting some better rotors and maybe some better pads, because I have the performance pack brakes and I think the calipers are definitely more than enough for this car. So the last mechanical thing that I'm going to be talking about is the suspension. Now obviously I'm not on the stock suspension struts nor springs. I'm running BC coilovers with Swift springs, and I love them. I definitely think they're way better than the stock struts. I actually think the stock struts on these cars are not good at all. I actually blew my strut out when I was on H&R lowering springs. Granted, I hit an absolute manhole and my whole suspension just collapsed. So definitely blaming that on the absolute crater that I dropped my car into. But so as far as things to watch out for when creeping up in miles in this car, the first thing I'm going to talk about is flywheel chatter. If you guys don't know what that is, basically on the manual cars, when you don't have the clutch pressed in on idle, there's like a really loud chattering, and it honestly sounds like the car is braking. It's actually an awful sound, but unfortunately it's actually completely fine and very normal. Just the higher mileage you go and the more you use your car, the louder it's probably gonna get. And especially if you go on like stiffer chassis stuff like the engine and trans mounts and the dog bone, the chatter is just gonna get louder from in the cabin. I'm gonna throw up a clip here. The only other thing that I would say you would probably have to do when this car gets higher mileage is just be a little bit nicer to it. And what I mean by that is just not ripping it all the time, because obviously, especially if you have the manual transmissions, those might just blow at any point. My friend had a manual trans, and granted he was big turbo, but his transmission like blew at like 120. But I definitely think that I can at least get 200 out of my transmission. But I would also just say, just instead of doing a pull like every time, just do it like every other time or whatever. These cars still absolutely rip though. I have not seen any power loss. So with that still being said, still fun cars to this day to drive. I love my car. I honestly don't plan to get rid of it, and I keep planning to do some pretty crazy mods to this car. Besides all that though, I think all these cars can definitely go and kick up to 300,000 miles for sure. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys have any input, any questions, or anything, let me know. And I hope I gave everyone some input on what it's like owning a higher mileage GTI. Peace.